friends, glad you could join me. I am so excited. I've just been invited to a party, and not just any party. It's Dracula's party at Dracula's castle. Oh, what's this? Hi, Lucy. Our names are Evely and Maisie. We live in Washington State and listen to your stories every night before bed. We would love it if you could create a story called Frankenstein Goes to a Party. Thank you so much. Well, it looks like I'm not the only one going to a party. In Castle Frankenstein, the mad scientist Dr. Frankenstein was checking the mail. The first envelope was an electricity bill.
Whoa, we need to cut back on what we're using,
he said as he read how much they owed.
What's the matter, Master?
Asked Igor, his hunchback servant.
Oh, nothing,
said Dr. Frankenstein.
Here, this other letter's for Frankie. Be a good chap and take it to him, will you?
Igor took the letter.
Yes, Master. Right away, Master.
And he shuffled off towards the stairs. Frankie was Dr. Frankenstein's monster. Frankie was stitched together from different body parts, had 2 bolts sticking out of his neck, and his skin had gone a bit green. Dr. Frankenstein had brought him to life a short time ago with a gigantic jolt of electricity. But then, afterwards, wasn't really sure what to do with him. So Igor had made up the spare bedroom, and Frankie had stayed.
Letter for you, Frankie,
said Igor, popping his head around Frankie's door.
For me?
Said Frankie.
Well, I've never had a letter before.
He took the letter in his big green fingers and tore the envelope open.
Oh, isn't it exciting?
Asked Igor, curious as to who would be writing to the monster. Frankie nodded slowly.
Oh, I've been invited to a Halloween party,
he said quietly.
Well, you don't sound very excited,
Igor said. Frankie shrugged his big broad shoulders.
That's because I've never been to a party before, and I don't really know what to do,
said Frankie, sounding worried.
Oh, you shouldn't be worried,
grinned Igor.
Parties are great fun. I love parties. In fact, I wish I was going to your party.
Well, come with me then,
said Frankie.
It says I can bring a friend.
Igor couldn't believe his ears.
Oh, I'd love to, said Igor. Whose party is it?
Frankie held up the invitation.
Somebody called Dracula,
he said. The party was for the following evening, October 31st. Igor told Frankie he needed to look his best. So the next day, Frankie had a bath, brushed his hair, and polished his bolts.
Well, how are we going to get there?
Asked Frankie. He wasn't used to going outside Castle Frankenstein.
We'll take the carriage, said Igor. You can ride inside and I'll drive. I know the way to Castle Dracula.
So early that evening, as the sun was setting over the forest trees, Igor took Frankie down to the castle yard, where the carriage awaited. There were 4 coal-black horses ready to pull it.
You just climb in there,
said Igor, opening the carriage's door. Frankie was bigger than the average person, so it was all a bit of a squeeze getting through the doorway. However, once inside, he was able to get comfortable on the red velvet seat.
You okay?
Asked Igor. Frankie managed to smile a thin smile.
Well, I'm still a bit nervous.
Oh, what have you got to be nervous about?
Igor asked.
Parties are fun.
But I won't know anybody apart from you,
said Frankie.
I'm sure you'll have a lovely time,
said Igor and closed the door. He climbed up to the carriage driver's seat, cracked the whip, and the horses raced forwards into the dusk. They'd not been traveling long through the upper slopes of the valley when Igor suddenly pulled back on the reins with a cry of, "Whoa!"
Is there a problem?
asked Frankie, looking out of the window. He was surprised to see a witch standing beside the road, holding a broomstick.
Oh, thank you so much for stopping,
said the witch.
My broomstick's broken down. I was trying to get to a Halloween party at Castle Dracula.
That's where we're going,
said Frankie.
You can come with us if you like.
The witch looked very grateful and hopped into the carriage to sit on the velvet seat opposite Frankie.
Oh, this is so very kind of you,
she said.
I'm Gertie, and I'm really excited about the party. Are you?
Frankie squirmed in his seat, looking bashful.
Well, kind of,
he said.
You see, other than Igor, I don't know anybody, so I'm feeling nervous about it.
Well, you don't need to be nervous,
said Gertie the witch.
Now you know me as well.
With a jerk, the carriage lurched forward and they were off again, racing along the road between the trees. The trees changed from firs and pines to oaks and birches as the road carried them lower into the valley. They'd not gone far when Igor suddenly pulled back on the reins with a cry of, "Whoa!"
Is there a problem?
asked Frankie, peering out of the window. He was surprised to see a werewolf standing beside the road, clutching a big sack.
Thanks for stopping,
said the werewolf.
This sack's far too heavy. It's full of candy for a Halloween party I'm going to at Castle Dracula.
That's where we're going,
said Frankie.
Why don't you come with us?
The werewolf looked relieved and with a mighty pull got himself and the sack of candy into the carriage, where he sat on the velvet seat next to Gertie.
Well, this really is good of you, he said. I'm Franz, by the way. Nice to meet you,
said Gertie.
I'm Gertie, and this is Frankie. He's a bit nervous about the party because he doesn't know anybody. Well, you don't need to be nervous, said Franz. Now you know me as well.
With a jolt, the carriage lunged forward and they were off again, racing along the road between the trees. They eventually came to the bottom of the valley, where the road turned to run alongside the river. They'd not gone far when Igor suddenly pulled back on the reins with a cry of, "Whoa!"
Is there a problem?
asked Frankie, peeking out of the window. He was surprised to see a fishman standing beside the road, clutching a pumpkin.
"Oh, how marvelous that you should stop for me," said the scaly fishman. "I'm going to a Halloween party. I swam as far as here, but now I don't know how to get to Castle Dracula."
Well, that's where we're going,
said Frankie.
Why don't you join us?
The fishman grinned broadly with his big fishy lips and then climbed into the carriage to sit on the velvet seat next to Frankie.
"This really is jolly splendid of you," he said. "Do call me Hector."
Nice to meet you, Hector,
said Franz.
I'm Franz, and this is Gertie and Frankie. Frankie's a bit nervous because he doesn't know anybody.
"Well, you don't need to be nervous," said Hector. "Now you know me as well."
With a judder, the carriage sprang forward and off they were again, racing along the road beside the river. They crossed the river on an old stone bridge, and it wasn't long before the road turned to climb up this side of the valley. Soon they were amongst the trees once more, with the river behind them. They'd not gone far when Igor suddenly pulled back on the reins with a cry of, "Whoa!"
Is there a problem?
asked Frankie, squinting out of the window. He was surprised to see a zombie standing beside the road wearing a ball gown.
"Oh, thanks for stopping,"
said the zombie.
"I'm not very fast and I'm afraid I'm going to be late. I'm due at the Halloween party up at Castle Dracula." "That's where we're going,"
said Frankie.
"Why don't you come with us?"
The zombie looked delighted as she climbed into the carriage to squeeze onto the velvet seat between Gertie and Franz.
"Oh, I'm ever so grateful to you," she said. "Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Victoria."
"Oh, greetings, Victoria," said Hector. "I'm Hector, and this is Franz, Gertie, and Frankie. Frankie's a bit nervous about the party because he doesn't know anybody."
"Oh, well, you don't need to be nervous,"
said Victoria.
"Now you know me as well."
With a shudder, the carriage jumped forward and they were off again, racing up the track towards Castle Dracula. Up on the mountainside, Castle Dracula looked very impressive in the moonlight. The carriage swept in through the castle gates that had been decorated with carved pumpkins and candles. Igor pulled back on the reins in front of the castle steps with a cry of, "Whoa!"
Are we there?
asked Frankie nervously as he gazed out of the window. He was surprised to see a vampire standing there waiting for them.
Thanks for coming,
said the vampire.
Please come inside and enjoy my very special Halloween party here at Castle Dracula.
But when the occupants of the carriage tried to get out, they realized they were packed in so tight that they were stuck.
Hold on,
said Frankie.
You all sit tight and I'll wriggle forward.
The carriage rocked and shook until, a short moment later, Frankie had managed to get through the door.
Oh, I'm ever so grateful that you came,
said the vampire.
I am Dracula. Hello, Dracula,
said Frankie.
Well, I'm Frankie, and climbing out behind me are Victoria, Hector, Franz, and Gertie. And up there is my friend Igor. Well, I'm afraid I'm a bit nervous about your party because I don't know anybody. Don't know anybody?
Said Dracula in surprise.
Huh, I rather think you do. All of my guests have arrived with you.
Dracula led them inside to where the music was playing, and soon everyone was having a great time. They feasted on candy and cake, danced and sang, and played games such as musical chairs and pin the tail on the gargoyle.
Are you having a good time?
asked Igor as he found Frankie heading back to the table for another slice of pumpkin pie.
Oh, absolutely,
said Frankie with a smile.
It may be the only Halloween party I've ever been to, but it's also the best Halloween party I've ever been to.
And do you know what? He was right. The end.
So that you don't miss a single episode, just click that subscribe button.